Yeah, I'm kind of, yeah. Um,
Be meticulous.
uh, just give me a second to pull up the notes. All right, so basically
What
the
might be
basic. Hold on.
helpful.
So hey, so what I'll do is I'll give the basic gestalt. Gestalt, whatever. I'll give
Oh,
the
wait,
summary.
figured
So
it
this is
out.
basically it. Well, yeah, hey, just let me give like the basic kind of linear summary. And Sky, like stop me if like I'm not, if anything catches your attention. That may not be entirely like you know coherent. So basically, guys, okay, so you've got in 2019 to 2021, sometime during that time period when David Grush was working for the UAPTF, all right, the UAP task force, he was working under the NRO, or working for the NRO as the liaison to the task force, all right? What happened? Well, during that time period, he was approached by who I think pretty sure was Carl Nell, because Carl Nell was the Army. He was working for the Department of the Army as a liaison to the UAP task force, and he was above David Grush in that hierarchy of that, environment, of that working environment that they had. I don't know exactly how the, you know, ranks and everything was structured. I know that both of them at that point were civilians, was my understanding. Maybe Grush was at the end of his Air Force career, but I know for a fact that Carl Nell was, he was still like able to, like, he was working as like for the Department of the Army, but he was not yet retired, but he was in the reserves. It's unclear whether that was like a civilian position or if he was like actually doing that as part of his military service. I don't know why I'm fucking jumbling this up. So the point is that during that time period, Grush, and this was something that he mentioned on Joe Rogan, Grush let it be known that he found out about crash retrieval programs. His entire story arc of becoming a whistleblower, the information that he received came from who I think was John Blitch, but definitely somebody in Barber's crew, connected to Barber, the current psionic whistleblower, crash retrieval guys. This all starts with David Grush receiving information after being introduced to who I think was John Blitch by Carl Nell back in sometime between 2019 and 2021. All right, that's verified. That's like Grush has said that he was introduced to somebody with a amazing resume. Hold on. That he was introduced to somebody with an amazing resume, PhD level. And I thought at first, well, Carl Nell's got an amazing resume, right? But he doesn't have a PhD. So John Blitch has a PhD. And I think that that's where all this began. And so then you've got in 2022, you've got Michael Salla. I know this is weird. Michael Salla went on a podcast, the Health Fitness podcast, the Health Guru podcast, and he mentioned that there was a group of psionics that were going to be coming out in the, you know soon, that they were going to be coming out soon, and that it was going to be like the real life X-Men. That's the only that's I have no connection of like connecting Michael Salla to Barber's group, but that's the only mention pre 2023, prior to 2023, that I can find of anyone connected to ufology making that type of prediction of a psionic X-Men crew coming out. So how did Michael Salla find out about that? I have no idea. But late 2022, it was like July of 2022, he was on a health guru podcast and mentioned that. So I don't know how that connects, but then we get to early 2023. Greer was approached in early 2023. March is best that I can figure, right around March. All right, this is prior to the congressional hearings. All right, the congressional hearings happened in June. Uh, yeah, June. It was 1 week before Stephen Greer's whistleblower conference, where Michael Herrera was the keynote kind of speaker and first told his story publicly in that type of environment formally, where we know now that of course that's where Barber was, was there and he witnessed Herrera, and that's his first kind of real life interaction with Herrera and them. So Stephen Greer started talking about this crash retrieval whistleblower team in early 2023. March, basically starting in March, every podcast interview that Stephen Greer did, he was talking about this crash retrieval team. The North Nellis crash retrieval team, he called them the defectors, referred to them as, Delta Force special operations guys, and, started talking about them every interview, just pumping them up, alluding to that he was going to represent this group of, crash retrieval whistleblowers in the future in talks with not only the government, Congress doing congressional testimony, but also representing them to the public. All right. That was his expectations. And if you go back and you listen to Stephen Greer, do I believe that Stephen Greer is an honest person in this context? Excuse me. In the context of this time period, and when he's speaking about this group, yes, I do. Why? Because he was, I highly doubt that he would misrepresent what Barber and Blitch and that psionic group, what they were telling him, right? Because he's like, you're not going to misrepresent the story that somebody that you're trying to, court, that you're trying to, that you're trying to represent. That's just not something that you're going to do. You're not going to, you're going to relay the story that they're telling you. So we can assume that everything that not only Stephen Greer, but also starting in 2024, in like early 2024, Herrera starts going on podcast and talking about this group of, this group of psionic, helicopter crash retrieval insiders. That was early 2024, where Herrera starts almost every podcast, interview that he did talking about them. Can assume that Herrera was telling the truth as it was being told to him, so it gives insight into not only, what was going on around that time, but what the story that was being shopped around, within the community to Greer. And we can assume that, that's what was being told to multiple people. So going back to 2023, you've got, Stephen Greer is preparing for his lead up to the whistleblower conference. You got the congressional testimony that happened in early June, and Grush, when he was giving out, when he was stating emphatically that there's been a crash retrieval program going back decades, that information he was talking about Barber and who I think is John Blitch, and the information that they were being given, or that they were, the information that they were giving him. And one thing to note too is that it's come out now in a couple of podcast interviews that I've read the transcripts of, where Herrera has verified that David Grush had been talking with Stephen Greer, that he had been debriefing, or Greer had been debriefing Grush prior to 2022. So like, there's a anonymous whistleblower that Stephen Greer, had talked about, uh, and he called him TE, but he also referred to him as a ex Air Force intelligence officer who had had a lot of like struggles with mental problems, who had had some issues specifically related to like experiences, is how Stephen Greer said that he had had, a couple of issues, and then he had also had these experiences where he had been threatened by like ARVs, and he had who, I'm not saying that it's Grush, but I'm saying that, it's been verified, or at least according to Herrera, Grush was one of Greer's, kind of whistleblowers. Like he was being debriefed by Greer, and prior to 2023 when all this started, to kind of come, to the public light. Also in 2023, you've got a guy named Shane Frakes, who some of you may know in the community. I'm pretty sure that he's this guy, Scott Weber, Scott K. Weber, who was shopping around a story. There's like a couple of articles that you can find, press releases about a bidding war, that, people were, there were publishers that were bidding for his story that is basically, about a team of psionics. Now it comes out that they've been connected. This Barber and his team have been connected to Shane Frakes, and that book was announced, I think, Simon and Schuster, in June of 2023. Ended up winning that bidding war. So like, this has been planned for a very long time. Now, one, so you may ask, okay, so are Barber and them telling the truth? I don't know if they're really psionic. I don't know, but I'm telling you that every like the major events without Barber and Blitch and the story that they were giving Grush, like Grush wouldn't have never, like, his whole story arc would have never happened. It was catalyzed. We would have never had the initial congressional testimonies, in my opinion, because Grush was kind of the main driver, right? His like whistleblower claims was like it was the foundation of that entire congressional testimony. I mean, he was the star. Not that Fravor and Graves weren't great too, but they were definitely supporting David Grush, and he was definitely, the star whistleblower of that entire congressional testimony. And it all started with, in my opinion, this all traces back to, that meeting that, Grush had with John Blitch, is who I think it is. Yeah. Um, and So this has been planned for a while. Now, are they working alone? Like, is this an independent group? I don't think so, and here's why. Because Herrera and Greer were both kind of, and Grush. Grush was taken to a top secret facility. He said he didn't elaborate on where that facility was, but Greer and Herrera did elaborate. They gave very, detailed stories, accounts of like their experience going out to these black sites, is what they called them. And best that I can tell, Herrera actually like went out there and went into the facilities, which are underground. And the facility that I think it is, I think personally that it's a Lockheed Martin RCS facility, located out in the Mojave Desert, in right outside the city of Hellendale. I'm pretty sure that that's the facility that they were taken to, but there's a possibility that it could be the Northrop Grumman facility on the other side of the valley, or on the other side of the desert. That one fits too. It was definitely a RCS facility, uh, in the Mojave, based off of the details that Herrera and Greer have given. Greer was just taken, to the best of my knowledge, he was just flown over. He was given like a helicopter tour of, a couple of these facilities. Two of them is what he said specifically, two black sites. Um, but he describes antenna arrays, that are, allegedly for directed energy. And one thing is that, in the Mojave Desert, that's the most active testing area in the world, as far as I know, for directed energy weapons. All right. In 2022, they had 394 directed energy laser air to ground tests. That means shooting a laser from the air into the ground of the Mojave. 394. And I've got the documents. If you go to my link tree, which I'll post in the nest, I've got not only the transcripts that I, use to, kind of do this research, that are free to download, but also I've got that directed energy environmental assessment for the Mojave that will give you an idea of exactly how much laser directed energy activity is occurring, over the Mojave. And so I think that's probably what he saw, is like one of these target boards. I think, they can look like antenna arrays. I don't know, but also, these RCS facilities, they have big radar antenna arrays, and you could easily be fooled into thinking that, it's more than what it is. But the point is that, like, these were the facilities. Now, with Herrera, he was armed, all right? He was like they armed him. Barber gave him a firearm, as a way to kind of ease his nerves, right? So they armed him and then they got in the helicopter. Okay, so uh Herrera, was put into contact with Barber and his group through Stephen Greer, all right? And Barber, had him come out and then took him on a helicopter ride to one of these black sites in the Mojave. Like I said, it's either the Tejon flight line facility, which is owned by Northrop Grumman. If you just type in Tejon flight line RCS, you can find it, or it's the Lockheed Martin RCS at Helendale, Helendale, which is on the east side of the valley, northeast, right, kind of below China Lake. And then the Tejon facility is in like the bottom, it's by Palmdale, like northwest of Palmdale. So Herrera, though, was armed, all right, was wearing a firearm, a Glock that Barber, I think Barber armed him with, and was put on the helicopter, and they flew out to this facility, facility, by the way, act top secret facility. They still do government work there, and taken down into the facility. So, armed. So
What?
how does that happen? Like, how does,
The story could be
it's,
bullshit.
I think it's clear that
And you're talking about Hellendale, but
it's not.
there's a fucking Victorville that's not even a real test site
It's
anymore.
not. It's not bullshit because we have someone that actually watched the flight tracking in real time. So it's not bullshit. This actually happened.
How are they able to do that? How are they able to take Greer over into some black site out in the desert like that? I mean, I know what I know Hellendale very well, by the way. I've fucking golf out there. I've fucking been all over the place. I fucking spent summers out there as a like, yeah. There's lots of weird stuff you could take a guy to, but if you have flight tracker data that he was over fucking China or Tatch or Tejon or one of those places or anywhere in between fucking Hellendale and Palmdale at any of those test sites, that's fucking crazy, dude.
So
You need like fucking clearance and shit. They don't even do like base tours and shit like that at a lot of those places. And if they do, you're not even going anywhere near that. Even like family day for Northrop Grumman and shit. Like you get to see some shit, but they're not gonna do that. They're not gonna give you a gat and fly you around in a helicopter. It's so crazy.
all right, so they armed Herrera and like they flew him and landed at one of these RCS, facilities. And so we can be kind of like confident, right, that they had, that they have an insight. There's a power, like there's somebody with power, either in Northrop Grumman or in Lockheed Martin, that got them clearance, right, to go into the facility like this, to land, to get a tour. This was clearly, I mean, somebody up on high, right? These guys are connected.
Very high.
uh
Very high. You could know senior fucking engineering on like a test thing and you can do all that shit on like a test day for something that's like up in the air and stuff. And like you couldn't even do a family day like that, dude. Or even if you knew somebody, like it's not even like that. They can just like take you to work one day. It's fucking crazy. Any of those sites, even like the launch sites that they have out there and all that, like this, this story sounds insane from somebody who like has been around people that work at those places, his family and all kinds of shit. It's fucking crazy. It's a really crazy story.
so who do we know that is, who do we know that's connected to Barber and them, that is an aerospace executive, right? That who would have that type of power, wield, that they could wield that power of getting, being like, hey, these guys are going to come through, yada yada yada. Don't worry, like they're cleared. Who could get them clearance? But an executive, right? That's who I
What
think.
year?
And so,
Time, date, location. What year was this?
2023 somber.
Maybe Stratton and them. Like,
Yes.
and that would mean that they were using the range like on a private basis, right? And they were able to just like get their own people. But that's still fucking crazy, dude. Can't just like call a guy and be like, yeah, we're gonna be flying around today. So I'm gonna bring a guy that's like not cleared for shit, and he's gonna get on the plane, and we're gonna give another guy a gun and all that. It's the craziest story I've ever heard.
Duly noted. So, who do we know that is connected to, Barber and Blitch and all them that would have that type of clearance? It would have to be an executive, right, or somebody with deep ties in these company in like one of these companies. It's not like there aren't any military guards at these facilities, right? These are private facilities, but you do have to. You're supposed to have a clearance to work there. These are not exactly open to the public. And we have a couple of witnesses who live in the valley, I keep calling it a valley, I think it's a valley, who live in the Mojave Desert area. One even that lives near Hellendale that has provided proof that Hellendale, at least, is an active site.
Yeah,
As in, I saw a picture that was sent to me of a Chinook helicopter, which is a heavy load lift, you know, cargo type chopper that was hovering over the facility. And this person, has given lots of information to kind of attest that the Hellendale facility is a very active facility. The Northrop Grumman on the Tejon flight line facility does not look to be as active, and that's based off. I've looked at satellite imagery for and ADS-B that it does not look to be active. But you don't. I mean, you don't spend the type of money on a facility like that and then just leave it inactive. Like, I'm sure that it's still operational in some capacity,
yeah,
but it is not a RCS facility anymore due to the solar power farms that are, nearby now. The radar would interfere with the solar power. I don't know. The whole thing is that the antennas have been taken. They've been removed from the Tejon facility. But the point is, all right, so who do we know? Well, um, Carl Nell, right? And what's Carl Nell's connection to Barber and all of them? Well, Skywatcher, the private company that Barber and them started, somebody on Reddit, I got to give credit to somebody on Reddit, found out that the Who Is domain name, that the Skywatcher Who is owned. It ties back to this guy named Alex Clocus. And who's Alex? Like, who's this guy Clocus? He's the guy that started Futurism.com, sold it. He's a venture capitalist, Silicon Valley type guy. He's also the guy that was on stage interviewing Carl Nell during the SALT conference. What was it, last year? He was that guy. I'm sure that everybody remembers the Carl Nell, right? Carl Nell, on stage, giving, speaking about everything that, people, fell in love with. I love Carl Nell. Carl Nell's a fucking hero, right? Same thing with John Blitch, by the way, fucking heroes. But the other guy on the stage, who most people probably don't even recall, was on this, barely remember it, that was Alex Clocus. So, there's a connection right there. Also, you got, Carl Nell. You've got Carl Nell is on UAPT, or excuse me, the UAPDF, UAP Disclosure Fund, UAPDF. Yeah, he's, on the board for the UAPDF. And so it's like this all ties in. Gary Nolan is also tied to Barber's group. Gary Nolan is, a part of the UAPDF. It's all intertwined and connected. And so you're telling me that Carl Nell couldn't get, them access to, one of these facilities on like an off day? Absolutely, he could. 1000%. I guarantee that he could. I mean, Carl Nell, that's one thing. It's like he's an aerospace executive right now. That's what it says. But who is he an aerospace executive for? Which company? Like, we don't know. Nobody knows. It's not listed, but that's his title right now. And he worked for Northrop Grumman for like, I I don't have his fucking resume in front of me. It was a significant amount of time, like over 10 years that he worked for Northrop Grumman as, ending in like a senior, engineering position. And then of course he worked for Lockheed Martin Space and Missile, early on in his career, 96 to 98, I think. But also, Carl Nell is, extremely connected. He literally, the guy is, he's like, how John Blitch, he's like the kind of the Forrest Gump of like robotics, done everything that you could possibly do related to robotics in the military and the government. Carl Nell is like that, but for foreign material exploitation, which is literally crash retrieval. That's literally what Carl Nell did in his career, was, you know, uh, exploit foreign materials, as in, if, try to find weaknesses in like the equipment and the, um, logistics of a foreign adversary by, analyzing their, their
Right.
stuff, like capturing their,
Right.
equipment, and then like analyzing it, testing it, testing the Chinese
Right.
rockets on our tanks, stuff like
No,
that.
I feel you on that. And he's in the right spot, and they're talking about the right areas that if you wanted to reverse engineer some of that stuff, that would be in his little scope to be a good spot. Be out there,
And
and it's low key as fuck.
one thing to keep
Hellendale's
in
like
mind now, so
fucking
like,
low key as fuck. People don't realize how like it's a little more off the radar than all those other places too.
yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah. Um, so like, also one thing to note about Carl Nell is like, what what is Carl Nell known for in the past, at the end of his career, right? What was he doing for the Army Futures Command? Well, he was working on the Convergence project. Okay. Type in to Google Project Convergence, and it's literally like, it's sensor technology for, it's like advanced sensor and UAS, type of technology. Basically, yeah, I mean, the most advanced stuff you could possibly think. And, Carl Nell was instrumental in getting those project convergence, which is I mean, tons of money. I mean, I don't know the exact number, in the billions of dollars, the contracts that have stemmed off of that. So is there some tie-in there? Is there some angle? I can't tell you what conclusions to make. I'm just laying out the events
Oh,
for
dude,
you
there's
guys.
so
So
many
like,
things that
I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to tell you like what to think. I'm not going to tell you the psionics isn't real or it is real. I don't fucking know. But all I'm saying is that what we're seeing has been planned for a long, long time. It's been a methodical, calculated plan, and it's, yeah, and these guys are, they're very good at what they do. So yeah,
yeah.
that's basically, I don't know,
You think
Sky.
it's kind
Like,
of funny that it's right
did I
there
miss
next to
anything that you
Rush
can think
East or
of?
whatever? That fucking Irwindale's little mock-up town they use over there. It's like one of the last stops before they send people. And they
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
replicate
yeah.
buildings over there too. They do a lot of advanced ground research around there on like a high scale kind of like they mock shit
Yeah,
up
Greta.
over there.
Yeah, I mean, it's, yeah, what's up?
Yeah, I think one question I have that might be useful is a lot of people seem to get hung up on whether or not it's plausible that these people would have been flown over a classified site. And I'm just curious, it doesn't seem like much hinges on the specific site or whether or not it was classified, because what really matters here seems to be that they were flown over a site that they perceived to be classified, or at least that they were told was a top secret area. Obviously, when you're in a helicopter, you're not look, you're not going to be fucking. You don't know where you're flying above, um, aside from what the pilots are telling you. So, for Greer, for example, it doesn't really. Nothing much hinges on whether or not he was actually flown over a secret test site. All that matters is that he was told he was, and of course he would believe it, and that's what
Yeah,
he's
but
relayed
Greer's
to us.
aware. Greer's had knowledge of like these RCS facilities for a long time, but I think maybe, I don't know, exactly. Okay, I literally went and I went back to the month of September. September 2023 is when Greer, did his flight, when he was, taking on his helicopter tour. I don't have a date. I tried to try my damnedest to find the exact date, and I went back and I watched ADSB data starting at September 1st, and I fucking made it to September 17th, just like watching, like filtering for like 5,000 feet elevation, watching the entire Mojave for any helicopter that would match it, that would make, and I gave up at 17 days in because even at 100 times speed, it takes a long fucking time. I just didn't have the time anymore. I just couldn't do it. One thing to note is that now, to that point, a case can be made that it's the Northrop Grumman Tejon flight line facility that they were taken to because of the fact that there is no flight restriction. There is no TFR over the Northrop Grumman facility like there is for the Lockheed Martin. So makes me think that, it's a bit more of a it's not as like locked down as the Lockheed Martin facility. In fact, if you go to adsbexchange.com and go to their tracking map, and if you look at the Tejon facility, the Flightline, RCS, Northrop Grumman, then you can see there's actually like a flight path coming into the Mojave Desert that goes right over it. I mean, there's stuff flying over it at all times. Whereas the Helendale, you just see helicopters flying near it, that are affiliated with the work there. So, you know, um, does that make sense? Like, did that answer?
Yeah, and the basic point is nothing much hinges on exactly where he was taken. All that matters is that he was flown over somewhere and told certain things about what that location was and what he was seeing. So if the hang-up point for a lot of people tends to be there's no way they could have flown a non-military person without the proper clearance over a classified installation, nothing much hinges on that, because what matters is Greer was told that this is what he was looking at, and was flown somewhere, wherever that ends up being, even if we can't quite identify exactly which location it was. Does that
Now,
sound fair to you?
here's one thing that we have to, yeah, but we have to consider the possibility too that Greer knew that it wasn't like that. Greer was lying. Like Greer's been lying too. That he's been in on the deception. If there is one, see, that's one thing. Like I got to be careful. Like, so if there is a like if this was a deception, that Greer was a part of, then he could possibly just have been lying about, right, about what he thought the facility was, when he could have known damn well that it was an RCS facility. You see what I'm saying? Because like he should know that. I mean, Greer's been around, dude. Like, Greer has a lot of knowledge. Like him or hate him, he knows a lot about like UFO lore, and the RCS facilities have been a part of the lore since like the 80s. So it's like, I mean, there's John Lear talking about it, in documentaries. There's books. These facilities are they're very well known. And so like you would think that he would know better, but I don't know. I mean, if sometimes, I mean, there's no way to possibly know. What I can say is that uh watching the last couple of podcasts of Stephen Greer after the egg, disclosure came out, you can tell that he is very disappointed, that he made a kind of an aside comment in podcast number 2 or 3, I want to say, that he did of the Stephen Greer podcast, where he kind of, as an aside, he kind of grumbles, like, oh, well, they can do whatever they want, they're independent, they're their own people. So like, and he clearly had the expectation to kind of be the one to lead this group of whistleblowers, like he has done with so many others. That's like a big currency in like ufology, is like your stable of whistleblowers and insiders, right? So like I think Greer and now why would Greer have been used? Because Greer is hands down the most successful ufologist in the history of like the world, easily. He sold CE5 and made millions. I mean, possibly tens of millions of dollars off of those CE5 events. So, if you were to learn the business of ufology from anybody, Stephen Greer would be the guy that you would want to shadow for a couple of years, right?
Were you looking at like when you're looking at data, where you're thinking this helicopter took off from base, like he literally went to base, flew up in the helicopter, or they took him from somewhere like Apple Valley or somewhere like a private airport? Just in this theory,
I would assume a private airport, yeah.
it's easy to figure out. But
So I do have another question. The Blitch guy, fits the description that Grush gave about who he was introduced to. What if someone were to say, well, there's another person that fits those descriptions, which is Eric Davis? What might you say to that if someone thinks it's Davis that he was referring to, not him?
Okay, let's pull up Eric Davis's resume. Eric Davis. Do you know like what is Eric Davis like? What is something special that he's done that would kind of like have him stick out in a Google search? Eric Davis, an organization that he worked for. I'm not too familiar. He's a physicist, right? DARPA, right? Eric
So, yeah.
Davis.
Without the flight data, I still say if I wanted to trip somebody out in a helicopter up there, I could take you from Apple Valley. I could fly you over the little NASA. It's part of their like they've got these huge dishes that look like stuff in a straight line of just like weird arrays, and then go land or go by Barstow or something. And I don't know if he said he landed, but maybe they went on foot or something. There's so many like things that are underground out there from mining and military shit that like I don't know. I don't know if he just took this
Very
guy literally
possible.
for a ride around the desert and tripped him out. Because you could just drive down a Route 66 out there and go see some shit that you're like, what the fuck? This is an alien base, bro. And then there's like barbed wire around just like a rectangle in the middle of nowhere. And it just goes to like a door to the thing that goes underground and shit. And like there's so much old shit out there. And then there's like new infrastructure shit that the old shit turned into.
The way that Herrera describes it, though, it's very like it's very it. I would like I'm pretty confident in saying that it's one of those two RCS facilities, just based off of the
Dude,
confidence.
that's
You know, I
so
mean,
weird.
not the confidence,
You gotta admit that's
based
so
off of
weird.
what how he talks about
You
it.
gotta admit that's so weird.
Yeah, man.
I
I
mean,
mean, it's weird.
I've got
And I tell you
not
what,
to like floss, but I've got
that
like
Tejon.
some serious like if it's just a senior engineer from from Northrop or something. I've never heard of that, dude. Even when you go to work with them or something, like you're not going in certain doors and you're sure as fuck not just like willy-nilly walking around, but like flying around and getting handed a gat. That's fucking insane. If that's
How
true.
good of
Yeah, I mean, I've
how
never
good of
worked
a
in one of these facilities, so I don't
so
know.
so you mentioned that one of the ways you narrowed down what facility it was from a picture from Greer's presentation where he kind of briefly
No, no.
no okay
Based off of well, yes, but I I can't find that fucking video. Uh, Mostly based off of the descriptions of that Greer and Herrera gave, um, and then also yeah, and then since then it's kind of been verified in a roundabout way by other sources of information that
okay. So I take it that whatever was seen on that video was too low resolution to really be able to to find the actual location. It wasn't either from a good enough angle or too quick or too far away.
What are you talking about, the egg video?
No, the Greer presentation where he briefly you mentioned he flashed. I think it was a GPS image of the location it was flown
A
to, and like
screenshot, like
yeah,
he flashed a screenshot. Yeah.
how what was kind of like how useful was that screenshot, or was it like not useful enough to be able to narrow it down?
It was pretty useful, but it was not the sole driver. Like, really, I just want to forget. Like, I just don't want to. Like, it's not a part of
Okay,
my
okay,
process of yeah. Like, it's just not a part of the information that I'm putting forward anymore. Because one, I can't find the damn I can't find it. I cannot find the spot where he showed the image. And two, it's just not like it was not the primary driver behind me like zeroing in on the Mojave Desert. And one thing too to note is that really, I mean, really, what's is that Herrera, had kind of said that, oh well, it was in their backyard. That was what he said. He referred to the black site being in their backyard, and what is literally in the backyard of the area that Barber and them are based out of is the Mojave Desert.
I don't know. The fact that it's near Fort Irwin and they do mock-ups of weird stuff out there and stuff sometimes. I think they partner with movies sometimes and take like a little fee. So I'm gonna look at what productions were going on in 2023
It's the
and make
most
sure they didn't
active.
just like literally just like pull up on something that was the end of a film set to move a prop or some bullshit.
Herrera went underground though. Like he went into one of these
Yeah, he's a
facilities.
lying sack of shit though. So how do you even know he did? You know,
I wouldn't be so sure, Somber. Like I wouldn't be so sure, man. I actually I believe that he's maybe the most believable part of this entire story. Pre meeting Barber. Since then, I think, dude, like, I trust me, like, I was with you, dude. Like, I was a doubter too of Herrera. In fact, as like recently as like 2 weeks ago, or maybe even it was within the past, 20 days, I had even, spoke out in a space, kind of detailing my skepticism of Herrera. But since then, I've located pictures of that where the caption was literally, from that it was a 2009 photo from the same unit, same area, not in Indonesia, but from Taiwan, the typhoon uh, humanitarian efforts that they had right before the hurricane or right before the earthquake hit. There was a typhoon that hit Taiwan, and they had literally the caption of the picture was talking about how a group of Marines were being left, by themselves out in the middle of the fucking jungle at an LZ to guard some earth movers. So like that tells me that okay, that was absolutely a common procedure, common SOP was to leave a group of Marines out by themselves, in the middle of the fucking jungle at an LZ. And then I found pictures too of Marines from the exact operation that Herrera took part in, carrying ammunition, magazines with, you know, live ammunition
really,
inside. Like, you could see the ammunition in the magazine.
really.
Yeah,
What do you
yeah,
make of that? What do you
yes.
make of his? Fuck, I forgot what they call it. What are they? What are they?
I have no
Or
idea.
what do they make it of his? His commanding officer or what the fuck they call it, or his squad leader saying all that shit.
Yeah, yeah, man.
That's
That's,
interesting.
I
Then,
mean,
if he's full of shit, and
I
you
think
found
that
proof that
one thing I
that
can
guy lied,
say,
that's weird that he would even just bring.
one thing I can, dude, like one thing about Herrera is that really like kind of like once I kind of got that little bit of doubt, of like maybe doubting my like doubting my kind of like conviction that he was lying. And once I kind of like watched some of it and really just his mannerisms, his demeanor, the guy does not seem like he's lying. He doesn't. He seems like
That's weird.
like he's a genuine dude. Like that's
We're talking
it's
about
just
the
a
same
feeling, but
Michael
also
Herrera,
forget
right?
the feeling.
I don't get that off him at all.
Yeah, man.
But I was
Well,
reinforced by that guy that. But if you found pictures of those guys packing and ammo and shit,
I
he
did.
specifically lied then
I
because
did.
he did say
And
that they didn't bring
proving that,
shit, and he highlighted that. So it'd be weird if he had that confused,
well,
right? That would.
I mean, here's the thing is that like his first line supervisor, that gunnery sergeant, or no, I think it may have been lower than a gunnery. I think his E6 was not with him the entire time, right? And I know how it's like the military, you can absolutely get detailed off into, a fucking black hole, and your first line supervisor wouldn't even know. Like they would know, but they wouldn't be there with you. It's like, dude, on those types of big training FTXs. I have not been on one out to sea. I have not been on one that was a humanitarian effort, but I can tell you that, going out to Fort Irwin, for instance, with my unit for the National Training Center prior to Afghanistan, I absolutely got detailed off into a couple of different days, and my staff sergeant he couldn't tell you what the hell I was doing. And so it's possible, and it's yeah, I just I think he's telling the truth. Now, the human trafficking thing, I think I cannot believe that. I believe that that's kind of possibly Barber kind of like giving him an explanation for the unexplainable to kind of establish like some insider
Oh God.
to establish his
You
backstory,
know what
right?
kind of a door that opens up though
Um,
over there, right? I mean, if you start getting into like
I mean,
partial
dude,
truths, and if you want to look for partial truths, I mean, getting moved around over there, like in terms of like human beings, and especially during things like that,
I don't believe that that happened,
yeah,
dude. I don't believe that there
yeah,
were
I don't
any
know,
human beings like in those.
I don't know.
But
That-
also, I
That's
mean,
not the most
what did
unheard of thing.
Herrera see? Like, what did Herrera see? Um, I don't know, but I believe his story something about. I believe him.
That's wild.
And this is coming from. I did not believe him for the longest time.
Yeah, I never. But like I keep saying, that was reinforced by that guy. But that just backs his case up more if his CO came out lying like that, verifiably lying. That's kind of like straight up cover up status, or the guy's a hater.
Man. I mean, I'm not married to my conviction. Like I'm not married to my belief. Like it could change tomorrow. So like, I'm just telling you that based off of what I know today, what I've learned up to this point, I believe Michael Herrera. Now that does not lend any credibility to. That does not say that I believe Barber or anything like that. I'm like, the jury's out with me. Like I'm not going to publicly make any, like I'm not going to tell you guys anything because like I don't want to taint like the work that I've done. Like I may believe them, I may believe them, I may not. One thing to note is that what did Ben Rich allegedly tell somebody at a outside of a speaker event outside UCLA during the 90s? He told this guy who has since gone on, spoke about it in documentaries. He told this guy in the parking lot after a speech that psionics, the ESP was how, these craft were controlled. I don't know, man. Like, that I'm a skeptic. So like, but I don't know. And so, I mean, anything's possible, but just the chain of events, like I'm confident that, what I've laid out just now, is as accurate of an account of the chain of events that can be had, in my opinion. Now, I mean, of course, like,
What?
there's always going to be more information, and I could be wrong. That's one thing too. I could absolutely be wrong. I could be missing some detail that could completely debunk my entire fucking theory, and that's fine. Like, that's fine. Like, that's what I want to happen. So I'm going to share my link tree up in the nest, and you guys can download all the. I mean, I made a Greer transcript, 270 something transcribed Greer video, made every video on the internet for Greer, for Herrera, for all these people. And you guys can download and do your own research and, prove me wrong. Like, please, like, I just want to, like, if people are doing research, then please, like,
dude, that's crazy.
Debunk me. Like,
if Ben Rich in the 90s had something for controlling drones that didn't involve control systems, they sure wasted a lot of fucking money. I'll just say that. Because I know like 96s to like early 2000, they were still like working out the best ways to like, flight controls and shit. They were teaming with like video game people for some of because they were already replicating some of the controls for like the my fucking memory sucks. I think it was F-16 something variants, but that's pretty trippy if the whole time
Logan,
they had
are you
mind
still
controls,
awake?
because I know for a fact in Huntington Beach they were still working on that kind of stuff with video game people from Irvine and shit, trying to figure out like the best controls for drone pilots and stuff like that. That's real. That's real shit. I don't know if that's how public that is, but they were working with this company. They made the really good flight sticks that are realistic.
Hey, Lunar User just up, and so Don Cred.
Oh, you beat me to the punch.
Yeah, man. I mean, there's, like I said, I'm not here to debunk anything. There's a lot of evidence that proves, there's a lot of supporting evidence, for psionics being a real thing that has been looked into by the government. Make of it what you will, but
no, it's there. It's there since the 90s,
really
and it goes back to Stanford. No, there's paper trails for that. Okay, so if you want to dive into that rabbit hole, but you probably already found all this stuff. But go to the University of Boulder around 1995, and they disappeared right before, right when the TRW is like gobbling shit up. But it's right around this guy's birthday, so Stanford leaked a bunch of his docking. You could see like his birthday list and who the guy was hanging out with and what was going on back then. But it's kind of interesting. 95 was you should look at Boulder.
Real quick before you go on to the psionics, I just have to ask if a guy is willing to make up details about sex trafficking. Why are we?
Excuse me, Lou. I think I was first. Are you skipping ahead of me again? Are you being rude to me again?
I didn't see your.
I'm sorry. I'm just so used to you being rude to me. So
Oh my god! Why don't you fucking cry about it?
See, what did I say? I'm used to you being rude to me and a bully and immature.
So fucking cry about it.
So can I please ask my question since I've been trying to come up for 30 minutes?
Can we take turns better? You could go
I
for
don't
it,
know.
man,
I got
Craig, but
mine first. I know how to properly
I can't
cue.
even see any fucking hands. So nobody's hands are even showing.
Well, my hand went down because I started speaking because somebody started speaking over me.
Good day, non-cred. Have your
Hello.
say.
All right, let's
Your
go to the
soapbox.
question, please. Let's go to the question.
Yes, Grider. Yet again, I haven't been able to listen to it start to finish because shit gets weird out here. But hey, man, like, can you, like, everyone's like hyping in on this? Oh, they couldn't fly over a facility. I mean, did they actually have to directly fly over it, or can you be like 500 feet off to the side, 1,000 feet off to the side? You know, I mean, like, were you able to like go and look up those like flight restrictions, like, and see if there were